Meeting come to order, please. Please rise and salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. President, I would like to request a moment of silence for a friend, city employee Scott Dowler. He was 38 years old and died of a massive heart attack, leaving behind a wife and 8-year-old boy.
Thank you. Be seated, please. Oh, yeah. I guess I should have had a roll call first. Let's do it now, please.
Commissioner Pellegrini. Here. Commissioner Curtis.
Here.
Commissioner Wilson.
Here.
Commissioner Hunter.
Here.
Commissioner Higgins.
Here. We're taking things a little bit out of order today because the Davenport family is here, and I don't want them to wait till the end of the meeting to hear about their dad. And David, would you please read the resolution for Bob?
Thank you, Roy. This is a resolution in the memory of former Commissioner Robert E. Bob Davenport. Whereas Bob Davenport worked tirelessly to help the Humboldt Bay Harbor Recreation and Conservation District in the early 1970s, and whereas Bob Davenport was elected as one of the original members of the Harbor District's Board of Commissioners, where he served the citizens of the Harbor District's 1st Division for 22 years, from May 18, 1973 through November 9, 1995. And whereas Bob Davenport served in various offices of the Harbor District, including as its president in 1977, 1980, 1981, and 1988, as its vice president in 1976, and secretary in 1973, 74, 1979, 1991, and 1992. Whereas Bob Davenport honorably served his constituency by participating in the development of many Harbor District projects, such as Woodley Island Marina, Shelter Cove Boat Launch Facility, the Fields Landing Boatyard, and the King Salmon Erosion Control Project. And whereas Bob Davenport was effective in representing the Harbor District with various legislative bodies in Washington, D.C. and Sacramento, and with various organizations promoting ports and harbors. And whereas he fulfilled his duties of office conscientiously with knowledge and consideration, and whereas he became a friend and respected colleague of his fellow commissioners and staff of the Harbor District. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the commissioners of the Humboldt Bay Harbor Recreation and Conservation District do hereby express their sincere appreciation for the efforts and contributions of Bob Davenport as a fellow commissioner and a friend, and do hereby express their heartfelt sorrow at his passing. The contributions that Commissioner Bob Davenport made to the enhancement of Humboldt Bay's commerce and recreation will be a lasting tribute to his hard work and dedication.
Thank you, David. Will the Davenport family stand and receive the plaque from David, please?
Mr. President?
Yes, go ahead.
Since I had the pleasure of, like you did, serving with Mr. Davenport, and my family was kind of raised with his family and share a lot of history, I would like to move that we adopt this resolution 2008-1 in memory of Bob Davenport.
I'll second that motion.
Motion been made and seconded that we vote on this. It's a roll call vote, so we'll have a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Pellegrini.
Aye.
Commissioner Curtis.
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson.
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter.
Aye.
Commissioner Higgins.
Yes.
Gene, go ahead.
Well, roadway, looks like I took it down on top, but we got to get this marine terminal through there now. You guys get to work.
We're trying, Gene.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move back to our regular schedule. First off, those of you that have cell phones, please turn them off. We don't need them going off during the meeting. This is a public comment, and it's only for things that are not on the agenda. The other comment I'd like to make is remind the board that there is no action on this item. The board is not time for comments from the board or anything, it's just receiving comments from the public. Also, there is a sign-up sheet on the podium that when you come to speak, why you can sign your name. Those of you that have a letter, your speech in letter form, if you would turn them in to Patty, I'd appreciate that very much. And we will limit the public comments to 3 minutes. You do have until January the 15th to turn in any written comments, so you can do that if you don't care to speak. But I would like to keep the speakers to 3 minutes. I have a stopwatch. I will give you 30 seconds, 20 seconds, 10 seconds, and then I will ask you to stop.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Before we take public comment, I'm aware we didn't have a closed session, but I don't know that the public did. So could we have a report on our executive closed session, please?
We did not have a closed session tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, those of you that care to speak on items that are not on the agenda, please come forward. You can line up. There's plenty of room. So looks like David, you're up first.
This has to do with Redwood Dock, marine feasibility study.
No, we're talking about the
Anything not on the agenda?
not on the agenda, David.
Okay, well now.
That would be 5A, I would think.
Okay.
I have what I think is an item 5, it's not on the agenda. I just wanted to take this opportunity to make this public comment. I wanted to commend your CEO, David Hull. He did a wonderful, polite, firm, positive job of responses, 5 emails to Mr. Dave Springs, requests and letters to him. And I think he did an excellent job. I was very proud of what he did. I think he made you and all of us proud.
Thank you, Kate. Anyone else that has any comments on that are not on the agenda? Seeing none, we will go to 5A, public comment on the Redwood Marine Terminal feasibility study. There is a list right there on the podium that you can sign your name if you would, please.
I'm David Elspeth, I live in Kennyville, and I am in favor of option A and not option B. I think that to artificially impose a limitation on A to not include B is an unreasonable thing. I mean, no matter whatever the report says, you commissioners can change that. You can change it to the point of saying that we'll go with A, and then if the railroad comes, then we'll expand it beyond that. I refer you to the Eureka Reporter issue, and there's an editorial that speaks to this subject, and it states that because you don't want to give up on the railroad, so you better go with B. Well, I just mentioned that. I don't think that's a reasonable thing. On the other side of it, there's a forum called Environmental Groups Oppose Bay Container Port. And I've read this several times, and as I read through this, this is something that I've probably read and maybe some of your other publications, but as I read through it, it seems to me that it struck me that environmental groups, that may be true, but as you go through this, it could well have been written by a conservative pragmatist who's fiscally responsible and realistic. I think that there may be some things that kind of a little bit over the top perhaps, but I think in the main it points out that option B, or option A is the appropriate one. I don't think it takes that position, but when you talk about all the environmental groups that signed on to this, it's kind of surprising to me that I think that the environmental group or community can come together with what I hope is conservative, fiscally responsible pragmatist. If you can't see a railroad coming, and I think that very few, if you take a vote in this group, well, maybe this isn't emblematic of the whole community, but I think that the prospect of a railroad through the Eel River is just, I don't know where that comes from. It's just it's a pipe dream at this point, and I think to lock in B, and especially with the prospect of even more money to go to the Samoa Pacific group. I mean, that's part of the thing. I don't know where that came from, because I thought that this study would be to see if the dock is feasible to do something with, and then but it's been blown into this monster thing that I think is unrealistic. So as I say, I think just I won't quote from this because I don't have time to do that, but I think that
Thank you, David.
You probably have read it, and if you haven't, please do. Thanks.
Good evening, Mr. President and Commissioners. I'm Jay Warren Hockaday here representing the Eureka Chamber of Commerce's board and members. Before I begin, I'd like to congratulate and welcome Commissioner Higgins, and I'm looking forward to working with you. As you probably know, as a result of the letter that we submitted to the record earlier this week, the Chamber Board of Directors did make a decision and a recommendation on this matter. At its regular meeting in December, we are urging you to endorse and approve option B. And the board in this discussion recognized that harbor development is just really one component of your mission, the other two being conservation and recreation. The one comment and observation and finding that was made was that the revenue generated through harbor development goes a long way to provide those services in the other two areas. It makes a lot more possible because of that revenue. So I think the issue you're talking about today really goes across the board in the spectrum of your entire mission. The board also embraced projections that we received from a number of sources that anticipate pretty dramatically increased trade in Pacific Rim countries, really for the entire West Coast, and are aware that most of the ports in California particularly, and those in Washington and Oregon as well, are operating at or beyond capacity now, with really very little opportunity to expand because of air quality issues. So we believe that our port is uniquely positioned to benefit from enhanced and increased trade opportunities with the Pacific Rim. Just recently, we had a meeting with representatives from the Indonesian consulate and had a very what I thought was a very productive discussion about trade opportunities with that country. So that's just one dimension or element of all of this that we think can benefit not only this immediate community, but also the region as a whole, probably the state as well. So in deference to the number of people that are here wanting to talk to you tonight in your time, and let me just say that on behalf of the Board of Directors and members of the Chamber, we're here to recommend your favorable consideration of option B. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, President Corrales and Commissioners. Kind of strange being on this side of the podium. Thank you for this opportunity tonight to speak and to comment. My name is Virginia Bass, and I first need to tell you I am not here in any way representing the City of Eureka. I am here tonight representing Evergreen Pulp Incorporated in general and Rex Phone in specific. Rex was planning to be here tonight, but a prior commitment made it so he couldn't be here. He asked me to attend and read a letter that he wrote into the record on this issue tonight. You each have a copy of this record. Should you have any questions, please do email them to his email address, which is on the card, which is on the letter, and he has assured me he will respond within 1 week. And if not, let me know, and I'll make sure he gets back to you. Dear Board of Commissioners, we have reviewed the draft Redwood Marine Terminal feasibility study and feel that the consultants did a fair job of developing 2 options for consideration by the Board of Commissioners. Therefore, on behalf of Evergreen Pulp, I encourage the Board of Commissioners to direct your Trans-Systems consultants to proceed with a business plan for development option B. Evergreen Pulp employs approximately 220 people, and an operation is very dependent on the existence and maintenance of the port. Development option B best meets our needs. We also believe that option B is the best option for the community. While recreational uses are important and need to be enhanced and maintained, it's important to remember the funding needs that go along with such enhancements. Grant funding can only go so far and are often non-recurring. The key to supporting the diverse recreational uses this community enjoys is a strong economic base which can only result from a healthy business climate and sound environmental practices. At one time, not so long ago, several thousand people were employed in the vicinity of the Redwood Marine Terminal. No one works there now. This valuable piece of port property needs to once again become a functioning and productive part of Humboldt County. Evergreen believes that option B can make this happen to the benefit of all who live here. If we can support the development of the Redwood Marine Terminal in any other way, please let us know. Sincerely, Rex Bone, Vice President, Resource Management.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm a citizen who lives near or bay. My wife Anna's going to just hand out some information that I did some research on port developments and also my comments. I'm a citizen who lives near or bay. For 34 years I've been practicing family physician in Eureka. I understand that large-scale ports can create many adverse health impacts for the community surrounding them. And so it's important to me that these potential impacts are addressed in considering local port development. The Redwood Marine Terminal feasibility study draft you are considering does not answer many of the concerns I have. I think we have to look at the port development, freight transport development, in its full-blown development. So, and that's when we need to look at it from that standpoint, because otherwise we'll really never know what the real true impacts are going to be our bay, our air pollution, communities, things along that line. So the questions that I would have to in the feasibility study are how many ships can we get in here and how fast can they move in and out? The numbers there are real important. How many locomotive trains will it take to move this, to service these? It's important to know what kind of other trucks, things like that are going to be moving in and out for congestion, things along that line. There's about, I understand there's about 1,000 acres along that peninsula that can be developed, and 3.5 acres of shoreline, not only public but private. And once we do start this process, there's a good chance that this can be really developed into a major port transport, and we really sincerely need to look at what the impacts are going to be. So just one question would be air pollution. We know diesel exhausts are listed by the California EPA as extremely toxic and are dangerous even at low levels. Ships and locomotives are incredibly polluting, and diesel trucks and cargo handling likewise increase that. I see no reference made to that in the study. Respiratory diseases, cancer, heart attacks, premature deaths are all significant factors. What are the threats to water quality? Freight transfer has marked increase in water pollution, bilge, anti-fouling, stormwater runoff, oil spills, dredging impacts are all there. Dredging does stir up sediments, very toxic chemicals, dioxins, mercuries, and other metals. Our bay and agriculture operations are an important food source and economic base for our community. What are the health impacts on existing neighborhoods, businesses, recreational users on our nearby port? Port facilities are loud and attractive structures with bright night lights. They cause significant ambient noise, and our structures polluting and worsening traffic congestion.
Thank you, sir. Your 3 minutes, thank you.
Could I just have about
3 minutes, please. Turn in your report and we'll take it over to Patty and we'll look at that. Thank you.
Good evening, Tina Christensen, 2031 Highway 36. I'm here representing the Humboldt Association of Realtors, but first I'd like to tell you that we had a business along the waterfront that survived for many years, and I think quite a bit of your audience was part of that business. That would be the Vista Del Mar, and that was when the trains were running and when the boats were going, and it was wonderful to have activity down there. Your dad was all part of it, so was Bob Davenport and Jean, and we all loved it. Anyway, it'd be nice to see the waterfront revitalized. This letter is from the Humboldt Association of Realtors. It says, Dear President Curtis and Commissioners, by means of this letter effective this date, the Board of Directors of the Humboldt Association of Realtors hereby endorse the above referenced Option B application for funding. Approval and funding of this collaborative proposal jointly submitted by the Humboldt Bay Harbor District and the North Coast Railroad Authority is critical for future development of Humboldt Bay and the economic growth associated with this much-needed port development. We applaud you as you move forward and urge approval of this project. Sincerely, Tom Heller, President for the Board. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Commissioners. Marcus Brown. I live in Arcata. And I just wanted to relay the conversation that I had sitting with Ron Cannell sitting next to me just now. I had to promise not to throw rocks at him after he sent me such a scathing email for supporting things here, that we found common ground. And I believe that if we stop looking for mud to throw at each other, we can find common ground. So the conversation went like this. You know, the Harbor District, we know, owns the Redwood Dock, the dilapidated dock, and doesn't it make sense to go ahead and fix it so we can all get some use out of it? I went on a cruise up to Alaska, and I saw docks like this. I'm very interested in the topic. I looked them over, you know, and you had your cruise ships down at one end, and you had your freight down at the other end. So I think the option A, I just think that most people could agree fixing the Redwood Dock makes sense. Going on to option B, my understanding is that would never happen unless somebody with the money, a big company, would come. And you'd have to go through all the environmental review, it would be scrutinized, and I believe that having that option open is also a good thing. So that's basically what I have to say. I mean, we ought to definitely go for option A, and option B looks like just an extension of, you know, enlarging on option A. So I'd like to lend my support to it all. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Marcus.
Ms. Mel McKinney, a long-time resident of this area since 1958. On your marine terminal, I felt that this plan was devised without community input. And it's presented as the only option A and B. Both designed around the premise that the railroad would be here to service it and ships as well. There is no plan from the North Coast Railroad Authority to build the railroad to Eureka. And what type of terminal is feasible for Eureka local businessmen has never been decided. How the county would best be served has not been addressed. This is not a plan, it is an inventory and evaluation of the old railroad dock resources. how a new dock would be built and exactly where the location would be, as well as environmental impacts have not been addressed. This plan, if it is to be built, should address alternatives, uses that other businesses would use from our area. Examples are the commercial fishing industry, and docking and mariculture, Snyder's type businesses, maybe even wave power from PG&E, or manufacturing, or your specific recommendations are all based on a railroad being in Eureka as a guaranteed accomplishment that has no state or federal funding backing or legislation to address it. A railroad cannot be built by piecemeal grants and wishes, dreams, and visions. It is to be planned and engineered to reliable services to and function in our area regardless of the storms, and it will be built and still take 10 years or more to bring about a business economy that would support it. Dredging our channels to 50 feet has nearly produced major erosion and has caused major changes around the bay, and the turbidity and the circulation has changed and if in the channel waters. And the commercial fishing industry will have to change again to keep from being covered around and out of with our fish in Port and Harbor. More consideration needs to be addressed to our local businesses that need space in the harbor, and consideration of what could be without a railroad. That may never be built to come to Eureka. I support neither A or B, but to address the alternatives. First, because the train is not here to plan on. Let's start the plan all over again. I support Dave.
Thank you, Melvin. That's, you've read your 3 minutes.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm the Ron Connell that was talked about a minute ago by Marcus Brown. I'm from Eureka. When I got involved in this here not too long ago, and I read the feasibility study, my first reaction, I got involved in it because back when I was a professional with the state of California, I reviewed thousands of feasibility studies and figured I knew a lot about feasibility studies. And I looked at it and I thought, well, first thing that bothered me is it started out on a premise that it wasn't really looking at a problem, it was looking at an opportunity, and it narrowed it very much. And then I was talking to some people who said it's really more of a vision statement. So I kind of recast my thinking in terms of looking at it as a vision statement as opposed to a feasibility study. The consultants did a great job, actually, of analyzing the situation. I was kind of impressed with the conclusions they came to about what was going on, and I thought I couldn't complain about it. But then I went and looked at the conclusion, and I thought, well, there's a big disconnect between what they talk about and what they suggested, and I guess that's what really nags at me here. I'm here just basically bothered by what I think is a leap towards something which has such improbable odds, as opposed to something which has very highly probable odds. If option B, there's like 4 major hills to climb, each one has like 1 chance in 4 of being successful if you do math. The whole thing has like 1 chance in 256 of being possible. This combinatorial math says so. It's like a leap of faith that just didn't seem to make sense. On option A, I went back through it again today. I said, well, that's like 1 to 1. We can do that. And it brings many of the benefits. So, I just am sort of nagged by the notion that we're chasing after something that has such a huge environmental hills to climb, counts on something coming that may not come, and may look for a railroad that I think was like a real pipe dream at this point. You do option A, I think option B, as pointed out by other speakers, option B isn't precluded if the world changes. You fix the dock, you get something good going there. You can always come back later and say that economies change, possibilities have changed, you can do that. But I think to basically chase after something which is such a long shot, which option B does seem to be to me, is really the wrong decision for a vision. The vision is to be something which is achievable. So I'm just urging you to kind of go back, look at what's really pragmatically most likely to be able to be done, and do option A, and I think you will get the best of all possible worlds. Thanks.
Thank you.
Kay Strickland, Chair of the Citizens Report Development. I guess I'm one of the pipe dreamers. Anyway, I want to register strong support for, I put it up as option B. I think that's the one that leaves the doors open for a wide variety of future uses. And I also support the consultant's recommendation for your treatment of the Timber Heritage Association. I'm a member of that and a strong supporter. And I also would like to see a tourist train out there and see the improvement of the route done so that eventually it can go around the bay and support a tourist train or some rail presence at this end of the county. I think that it would be wonderful if we could get it from Sidley all around the Samoa, but the main thing is to bring some rail presence up here, and a tourist train would be a fantastic economic benefit. It'll bring jobs, it'll bring a lot of things. And I think that the future uses cannot be determined now. I do hope you go with option B, but the future uses, until the financial feasibility and business plan are finished, and you know what they come out with, and before anything else can be done, you'll have to go through CEQA and NEPA. We all know all the agencies that have to get in and talk about it and approve of it. So I'm not going to get into the rail and trail issue tonight. I will do that by updating my word that I did in October. But I would urge you tonight to approve, well, this is 10B. On this one, go with option A. Option B. That leaves the door open for more variety of things.
Thank you, Kay.
Move that back to the...
Yeah, go ahead. Kay, would you take that, or Pete, yeah, take it back, so that, thank you, that helps a lot. Go ahead, ma'am.
Hi, Jessica Cuccinelli, taxpayer. I have read the 142 pages of the feasibility study written by Trans Systems. My immediate reaction to it was that it provided three very important conclusions. One, never again waste so much money on this kind of a narrow bias study. Two, the cost of building the phantom port, like the cost of building the fantasy rail, would never be paid for by an Arkley-type sane person. And three, neither option A nor B is feasible or even reasonable on this bay. I'd like to thank the commissioners tonight for allowing us an opportunity to express our views. Trans Systems could only come up with two very infeasible and expensive options. I would like to suggest some other possibilities, and to quote from David Hull, a full suite of ideas. One, a fisherman's wharf where one could buy fresh fish, such as Santa Cruz. An aquarium, such as Monterey Bay. 3, tour cruises around the harbor, Monterey Bay. 4, a teaching marine lab, such as San Jose State's Marine Lab at Moss Landing. 5, a maritime museum. 6, recreational opportunities, such as fishing and boat launching. 7, aquaculture development for clams and oysters. 8, small local businesses. The list seems almost endless, doesn't it? If the researchers could come up with only 2 very costly options. Where are the options for recreation? Where are the options for conservation? 2/3 of the Harbor District's mission were totally ignored. Are we going to spend another $100,000 on each of these areas? It seems a waste. And then there's a question of quality of life. Do we really want to turn Humboldt Bay into yet another polluting monstrosity such as Oakland? Do we really want our bay to be barren and industrial and environmentally destroyed? Then there are the health issues. Ports carry high cancer rates among the population of people. Sounds like a class action lawsuit ready to happen. The feasibility study is wrought with problems. A huge dependency is having a rail that would cost possibly $1 billion and does not include passenger trains, has to be maintained yearly, and has to be repaired every time there's a flood or a mudslide. There is a need for a deeper bay, something that has not been accomplished in 10 years and has only provided a hole for taxpayers' money to be flushed into. Finally, after having reviewed the study, I have compiled a list of 41 problems the proposed port would have and an additional 33 things that need to be done to even get the port off the ground. The residents of Humboldt are getting increasingly tired of only a few dictating what they want instead of what the majority wants. It's time for a real positive change. The answers can be found for the residents of Humboldt County, not from outside research firms who do not have to feel the repercussions of a failed study. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Carlos Quiladas, Friends of Small Places, resident of Fortuna, California. The Redwood Marine Terminal Feasibility Study provides too few choices and little by way of feasibility. Even should we proceed with the rail from Samoa to our southern metropolis at South Fork, which is going to be talked about later, there will be no need for the kind of development or the scale that's being proposed under option B. It's been touted that port activity will pay for recreation and conservation. That's not been proven, and in fact, we have much evidence that the proposition is wrong. The Port of Oakland is neither a recreational mecca nor an example of conservation excellence compared to San Francisco's side of the bay, which really began to thrive after it moved its cargo component to Oakland. Proceeding with either of the alternatives presented will violate the recreation and conservation mandates of the district and will much damage our existing sport, commercial, and recreational uses. I would also caution that electing and embarking upon an open-ended business plan with huge environmental ramifications is an immediate violation of CEQA. The total scope, how many tankers, containers, how much airborne particulate pollution we're going to have, how much extra traffic. All of this needs to be considered under CEQA before the environmental review can even commence. I recommend a moderated approach with an open dialogue with our community. Please find out what local uses we have that don't require another deepening project, that won't interfere with our sport and our commercial fleets, and that won't add new layers of pollution and polluting industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carlos.
Danielle Spish, McKinleyville. As most of you know, sometimes I don't agree with David, and this time I don't. I would recommend B, but my concern is that environmental groups will sue until we'll never get through the Eel River Canyon. And therefore, I think we may be looking at having only option A, because it'll be many, many years. We have to think about what's going on in Marin because the lawsuits are already there with some of our local environmentalists supporting those very lawsuits. And I had thought that maybe we could take the route from, backwards from Blue Lake and through Corbell and into Red Bluff. And because that is what I understand an available easement. But then Supervisor Woolley, who was on the railroad board, had said, no, it's required that the North Coast Railroad repair the line from Eureka down to Willits. So that seemed to preclude putting in the line going straight into Red Bluff, because that could be done in the same number of years that the port was being developed. I know a lot of people are very concerned about us starting to look like Oakland. Look, this is a very small port. This is a very small channel. We're not going to be taking ships that Oakland takes with the containers that are stacked so high they can barely get under the bridge. That's not the kind of port that we have. We would not even have the turnaround room for that kind of ship. we'd have to dredge someplace over by Eureka City Hall and make another channel for those big boats to even be able to turn around unless they decide to back all the way out of the bay, and I'm not sure the bar pilots would allow that to happen. So I think that people are looking at something and saying, Oakland, 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 and everyone's been down to Oakland and seen the gigantic cranes, and we watch them come in on TV. But I think we're going to be a very small port. We're not going to have 200 ships a day trying to come in and unload things. We'd be lucky if we had 200 ships a month. I'm not even sure, I can't remember Charles Olivier saying if we ever had 200 ships a month, but I'm sure that he might speak up and be able to say how many we've had as a maximum. But, we're just going to be a very small port, and I don't think we're going to 50 feet on dredging. And so I support B, but I'm concerned that we're not going to get past A with the litigation that will probably come up.
Thank you, Penny.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Alyssa Fogg. I'm a graduate student in the Wildlife Department at HSU. And I'm here tonight to tell you that I support option A for the feasibility study. I'd just like to tell you a few things why. Option B relies on the railroad returning to the North Coast, which is becoming less and less likely with lawsuits and pending very expensive EIR. And I also moved to Humboldt Bay and chose Humboldt State partly because I have asthma. And the air is clean here, unlike in many other parts of California. So what would increase container ships, diesel trains, and trucks, this will reduce the air quality and turn this place into Long Beach, and it'd be detrimental to the air quality. Humboldt Bay is also very important to nesting, wintering, and migrating birds. An oil spill like what happened in the San Francisco Bay Area recently would be detrimental to their population viability. This commission needs to concentrate more on recreation and conservation and develop alternatives such as tourism, restoration, that will help support our economy in a sustainable manner rather than relying on a pipe dream as an option B. Both these options do need to have an environmental review, but ultimately, I do support option A. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Anybody see the new moon hanging in the sky there tonight when we're all coming into the meeting? Isn't that beautiful? It's really beautiful. It's a new moon, it's a new time, and it's time for a new plan. It's really that simple. A new plan would look different than even A. I definitely do not support B. I generally support A, but a new plan would remember that you are the Harbor Recreation and Conservation District. And you would start doing sustainable projects with a sustainability plan that didn't play around in a sandbox like when we were in the kindergarten where we dug holes in the sand, poured water, and guess what? The hole in the sand filled in. I mean, I don't like my taxpayer dollars being spent on a plan that involves digging a hole in the sand. Let's grow up. We're not going to build the railroad down the canyon. I was asked by the railroad as a consultant to tell them what I thought professionally of the ability to rebuild the railroad down the canyon. I've been doing erosion control on the North Coast for 35 years. I do it professionally. I've done it for nonprofits and for the community, and I've worked for 23 years building the Hammond Trail on what was a bunch of blown-out gullies and blown-out bluffs so that this community could have a plan for economic development, conservation, and recreation. Not recreation, but recreation. And so we can do that with the bay, and it involves a trail, and it involves the rail maybe around the bay for a tourist excursion train, but it doesn't involve something down the canyon anymore. Grow up. Stop thinking you can use my tax dollars in a scheme that is more than a pipe dream. It is just obscene. It is shameful. If any of you vote tonight for a plan that involves this or the item after this, that involves spending millions of taxpayer dollars on such a fiasco, Shame on you. And if you aren't paying attention to the local elections, you're going to be reelected. So pay attention, grow up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Roy, just to make clear to people, we're taking comments tonight. The plan will be revised. Our group will be voting on this on February 28th.
Thank you.
Thanks, Roy.
Go ahead. Thank you. I'm Chris Rawl. I live in Arcata. I'm with Green Wheels. We're an organization that promotes balanced and sustainable transportation. I've taken a look at the feasibility plan. I see really two core problems with option B. There are others, but I'll leave those to other speakers. Number one is the issue of competition with more feasible routes for container shipping. Prince Rupert, Ensenada, expansion of other California ports, including Oakland. They've already got Prop 1B money to do that, and the Panama Canal expansion is coming. So to assume that we're going to have this sort of increase in container shipping that's going to kind of come and arrive and sort of make this whole container shipping thing work in our kind of backwater port, which is basically what we have, is very to be viewed skeptically. Number two is dependence on the railway. The railway hasn't been running in 10 years. It wasn't really reliable before that for many decades, and a reliable rail is going to be required if you want to do container shipping. Due to political, economic, and geological realities, it's not likely to require the investment needed to rebuild to Humboldt Bay anytime in the near future. And just, recently was forced to stop work due to a lawsuit, so they definitely have some kind of organizational issues that they need to deal with. Option A, the idea of accommodating short sea shipping, I think is a good one, but option A misses the fact that privately owned facilities around the bay have the capability to handle short sea shipping. Say that 3 times fast. Should it materialize, since we're not really seeing a whole lot of that yet. But as increased fuel prices change the shipping landscape, that may indeed occur. But again, we already have facilities to handle that to a great degree. So in short, this option has some problems as well. What's the disadvantages of moving on to a business plan straight away here? What do we lose? Well, $100,000 more of Headwaters Fund money put into a business plan for a venture that's not feasible and therefore will not strengthen our economy. Time wasted that could be spent exploring feasible options to develop jobs now rather than failing to develop jobs after a decade of effort and investment. So we get a choice of action by this commission. Get to that choice. This was supposed to be a draft document originally, from what I understand. Therefore, I recommend the commission instruct Trans-Systems to rewrite the feasibility study, and the final should include all possible uses of the site, considering that aquaculture was not originally considered, a cost-benefit analysis, and properly describing rail construction to include the upper end limit costs as well. So I wish you luck with trying to get that done, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Damien Mooney. I'm president of ILWU Local 14. We're the longshoremen that load the ships that come in and out of this harbour right now. I'd like to point out that this has been a commercial harbour for 150 years. It's the reason Eureka is here. And the jobs that are created for in my industry are very good jobs. They're living wage jobs. We can afford to buy houses. We spend our money here locally on food, cars, clothing. We have medical insurance, so we help keep doctors and dentists in this area, which they seem to be leaving a lot because there isn't. The county is not very wealthy, and we want to keep good jobs here. As far as the environment goes, as I say, we've had commercial shipping in here for 150 years. We still have eelgrass. We've still got fish, birds. The commercial traffic is not the one not doing any damage to these things. Our employer just spent a bunch of money buying 3 new trucks to replace 3 that we had to bring them up to the new California clean air standards. They're interested in the environment just as much as we are. This weekend, we are loading a ship with pulp from the pulp mill. Approximately 7,700 tons of pulp will go on that ship. It will be done in 2 days and gone. That is taking approximately 250 trucks off the road. So if you're worried about pollution from diesel, you have to consider how many trucks are coming off the road for every ship that comes in here. And that's also between $3.5 and $4 million worth of product that's being made here that we're shipping out. The pulp mill employees and us are all doing that. These little tourist things on a wharf do not pay very good wages generally, and they definitely are not going to replace the jobs that we could have if we develop this terminal and make it a feasible operation. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Susan Kim. I live in Eureka, and I'm here also on behalf of the North Coast Environmental Center. We were one of the signers on the environmental statement. I'm glad that we're looked at as fiscally conservative. I will say that we are not in favor of either Plan A or B. We are not opposed to shipping. The reason we don't have shipping is because we no longer have anything to ship out in particular, at least in quantity, and we don't ship enough of any one thing in to warrant it. We already have docks that can be used for whatever we will need in the foreseeable future. The Harbor District just recently adopted a strategic plan for the next 5 years. It's a good plan. One element, I'm going to quote, is to pursue economic development that is attainable, innovative, and consistent with both environmental practices and the Humboldt Bay Management Plan. Well, I don't see anything very innovative about making a big dock that's going to bring in stuff from, I don't know, Japan, that we're going to then put on a truck and ship down to Oakland because they have too much pollution and we want to share it with them. As has been pointed out, the study really only looked at a limited number of options. This is zoned coastal industrial. There are 8 permitted uses and 11 conditional uses. And as somebody else pointed out, this is funded by Headwaters money, which is aimed at economic development. And every study that's been done recently has either said, don't do increased shipping because it's not going to work, or they've just simply not gone there because it's not something that they see as an industry that's going to thrive here in the near-term future, meaning the next 20 or 50 years. So I think we should make use of the terminal. And I think we need to look at other options. Some of them have already been mentioned. I'm going to throw in one that hasn't been, since we're looking at building a dock there anyway, and replacing the existing dock. We're looking at putting in one for big ships, which the study didn't even say we really need to be bringing in. We do have an immediate need for dock space for pleasure boats, shipping, fishing boats, and sailboats. There's a 2-year waiting list for berth right now at Woodley Island Marina. Shorter waiting list at the city marina. We could fill that, but it would pay for itself. And it's an immediate need. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Dave Sprini from Neiman, and in your packets tonight I believe you have a letter that I submitted to the Headwaters Fund Board earlier this week about the concerns for the process taking place, and in particular related to the feasibility study. I'd just like to read a couple of passages, and in particular in the 2003 Port of Humboldt Revitalization Plan Executive Summary, it states, The scenarios that include a public general cargo terminal are not recommended because they're not supported by the market analysis, and they involve an unreasonably high level of risk. Almost all of the markets that would be involved in public general cargo terminal operations were identified as unattractive in the prioritization analysis, and Humboldt Bay was found to be uncompetitive in most of them as well. The build it and they will come nature of public general cargo terminals, combined with the short contract terms common in the trade, high customer leverage, intense port competition, would result in excess capacity and a level of risk that's not commensurate with the limited market opportunity available. That study was used for the Samoa Town development, which is right on the other side of the tracks from what you're proposing. When I found that out, I was quite amazed that there wasn't more coordination between this group and the county in working out what seems to be a major land use conflict. In particular, from the Samoa Master Plan, MIER, submitted in September, they worked off your 2003 feasibility study. And in that master plan, they quote your feasibility study. The Samoa Township proposal would further narrow the coastal dependent industrial area by converting a portion of it to housing. Under current conditions, the site is poorly situated for large-scale marine-dependent industry, both because of its shallow depth and because of the inherent conflict with housing. The currently planned configuration, including the Samoa Township development, could be adapted to small and medium-scale marine-dependent industry use along the water, up to about 50 size acres, if housing is limited to the west side of the rail corridor. So in light of the above, it's difficult to understand why only 2 large-scale, marine-dependent, shipping-based, industrial development projects were selected to move forward in the current feasibility study before the public was involved. If the public had been allowed to participate at a much earlier point in the process, these obvious conflicts would have been addressed. In essence, the Headwaters Fund grant has been used to put a major industrial project in motion, which not only conducts your own previous studies, it is not in harmony with prosperity, divides the community, and surely abuses, if not violates, the vision and intent of the Headwaters Fund as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Before, just a minute. In the audience, how many other people are sitting here who want to speak tonight? We've been at this for an hour, and I'd just like to see a show of hands. Okay, we will continue, but I just want to kind of get an idea. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Julie Williams. And I'm here tonight representing the Northern California Association of Home Builders, and I'll keep it as briefly as I can. We want to thank some of the earlier speakers who have brought out some very good points. The fact that this bay has been operating as an industrial port for over 100 years. Also, we want to make sure that the record reports that we support Alternative B. The more alternatives that are out there, the better. And if it does turn out through the CEQA process or any of the other reviews, including the Coastal Commission or anyone else, that